Welcome to the Under Gallery. This is where we keep all podcast episodes deemed too dangerous for public consumption.
This floor is covered in data.
Is that important?
Well, in 50-odd years I've never squashed anything with my size 12s that wasn't. Or are you? Are you sciencey?
Me? Yes.
Got a name?
Two, if not more.
Good. Good. I've always wanted to meet someone called Two. If they weren't called more. Now, I want this data analysed and I want a report in triplicate with lots of graphs and diagrams and complicated sums on my desk, ASAP, pronto. Do I have a desk?
No.
And I want a desk.
Get a team. Analyse the bits. And some of the bytes.
Does anyone else want this? No? Good. I'll eat it.
Someday you could just walk past a fat rascal.
Never going to happen.
Here we are. As you instructed, nothing has been touched.
This is why we called you in.
Interesting.
The broken glass?
No, where it's broken from. Look at the shatter pattern. The glass on all these smartphones has been broken from the inside.
As you can see, all the media apps are empty. No podcasts of any kind.
So?
There used to be.
Something's got out of these smartphones.
Lots of somethings. Dangerous.
This whole place has been searched. There's nothing here that shouldn't be, and nothing's gone any further.
I've finished that analysis. The data, it's audio fragments. A lot of different sounds, but none of it's ambient. It's like somebody's shredded the sound of our voices.
Why would anyone want to do that? I mean, I know we're meant to keep an open mind, but are we supposed to believe in podcasts that can hide in smartphones and have some sort of a grudge against us?
You all right?
We have to go. Right now. This minute.
What's wrong?
The podcasts from the smartphones. I know what they were doing with our voice data.
What?
They're going to copy our voices and take over Something Who.
Wait a minute. Do you mean that if we just stop fighting them, they'll make our podcast for us?
Well, that's a thought. They might even be good at it.
Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?
Gotta be worth a try.
Hello and welcome to the second part of our Something Who anniversary special. And after the 3 Doctors and the 5 Doctors last time, this time we're dipping into the new series and we're going to be looking at the Night of the Doctor and the Day of the Doctor. And the people I'm looking into it with are Giles.
Hello.
And Paul.
Hello.
So, I mean, super to have you back again, literally less than 2 weeks from the last time.
Yeah, it's something of a record.
Yes, I agree. I concur entirely.
Yes, our banter is in top form, isn't it? Anyway. So, Night of the Doctor. So, where were you when you first came across this piece?
Giles? You had it spoiled for you by the BBC themselves?
No, I didn't.
No?
I think it popped up on Gallifrey Base. Suddenly was alive with chatter about it. I think, unfortunately, I did somehow pick up, that it was probably McGann. I don't think I leapt into it with. I don't think I got it spoiled by as many people did by actually going to the website and having it right in front of them.
I can't entirely remember now. I know it was at work because they did it during the day, which I believe was some sort of last-minute panic, wasn't it? Because it was going to be leaked.
Oh, was it?
So then,
okay.
Yes, then they took control of the situation by releasing it on their own time scale,
Right?
And then leaking it themselves in news reports minutes later.
Classic BBC marketing.
I'm fairly sure by the time I saw it, I knew it was McGann because I'd foolishly read something, probably on Gallifrey Base. I did a very good deed that day. I emailed, once I'd watched it and enjoyed it and realised that the news was out and about everywhere, I emailed a good friend of mine and told him, I sent him the link, the direct link to it, and said, watch this now before, because I know he logs onto the internet of an evening. I said, watch this first before you do anything else on the internet. And it worked. It meant he had a wonderful surprise.
Yeah.
and he's forever in my debt now. 6 years on, and he still hasn't repaid me.
I'm trying to think who it was. Someone of my acquaintance. I think it might have been Stuart, my old Only Connect teammate, or someone like that. But he claims bonus points with his other half by having clicked the screen while putting his hand over the bit that gave away that it was Paul McGann. So she was able to watch it unspoiled.
I can't remember now because it's so long ago. Whether there were any rumours that it was McGann, whether genuine leaks had occurred on the forums or anything. Can anyone remember?
I'm so unconnected that I would never have come across that. But I did come across somebody saying, "Oh, look, there's this new thing with McGann in it." So that kind of spoiled it in a way. But then I don't know. I mean, to some extent, yes. So there would have been a visceral thrill, I suppose, of suddenly discovering that it was McGann, McGann was in something. But I wasn't never aware there was even anything coming. So it wasn't like, oh, this thing that I knew that was coming, as the surprise that McGann's in it has been spoiled. It was like I didn't know anything was coming, and then I learnt that something was coming with McGann in it, and then I watched it, and it was quite good. So that was okay, I think.
Yeah, it spoils itself 1 minute in, doesn't
indeed.
it? Probably about a minute into a 6 minute story. So,
well, there were I seem to remember there were rumours, but then it was a wild time, and I think there were all sorts of speculations about what the other Doctors would be involved in. And is this around the time with the McGann, the elephant sitting on the TARDIS room, or?
Oh God!
And do you remember that one?
I think it might have been a year or two later.
I have a feeling it was the Doctor's trainers who generally tended to be quite a good...
It was, wasn't it? Anyway, let's get back onto the subject of these wonderful 6 minutes, because the surprise, that initial surprise for 1 minute the first time you watch it, is by far the least of its pleasures, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was a significant Big Finish listener. I mean, significant only in the sense that I listened to a lot of it, not that I was in any way more important than anyone else. And so I'd listened to those first 2 series with McGann in it before the new series came back, when it was sort of taking the story forward, when we didn't know that there was going to be anything else. I mean, I got swept up in that, definitely. So it was rather nice, I think, that when this appeared, it was paying some tribute to Charlie and the other Big Finish companions.
It's what a nice bonus. That was unique at the time, and I think it remains so. Perhaps it always will. There'll never be another opportunity or necessity to do that sort of overlap, will there? I wouldn't have thought. It's that the peculiar circumstance of that gap.
Yes.
That Doctor-shaped hole that we have, which meant it was possible, and a fun little thing to do for the fans without any adverse side effects.
And he was the absolute perfect age to be coming back at that point. I mean, he was still recognisably the same guy from the TV movie. I mean, clearly almost 20 years older, but certainly looking much the same, just a little bit older. And he seemed to capture very quickly the performance that we might have expected of him.
Indeed.
Yes.
I mean, the only problem I have with it is that I want more, which is a nice position to be in. Goodness me, it easily had a whole episode of this. Now, I'm not going to get into... Yeah, you could have done, couldn't you? Easily.
Yeah.
It packs a lot into 6 minutes.
Yes, yeah, well, I mean, McGann is a class act. You can rely on him to carry it, and I think the moment he turns up and is in charge, then even if you don't remember him from 90 minutes on screen or 60 minutes or whatever he got in 1997, you can buy that. Okay, this is the Doctor, and he carries it off with conviction. And the other nice thing from the spoilery point of view is that, of course, from again fan service, but no sooner have we got the Doctor, but they also throw Khan at us as well.
Yeah,
and that's another nice surprise, because obviously we revisited that later, so that was a nice little thing to throw in there as well.
It's very interesting, isn't it? It's a perfect example of using continuity for a specific reason. That has a story reason to be there. He needs to not be alone when he regenerates. He needs some outside commentator, so he can't be literally alone, because then there's no story. He can't be with a companion, because we wouldn't know the companion. So it's the sisterhood is a plot device there. But
Yes, good point. Yeah, there have to be someone who knows him, but...
it's very nicely done because it's even at this point, however many years into New Who we are, there's still something. It still seems thrillingly old Who, doesn't it? We don't get that sort of thing in the modern era. Chanting, cloaked, supernatural people. That just seems very, very old school.
Yes.
But as much as you can in 6 minutes, brought up to date. What else does it do in 6 minutes? I hope it is 6 minutes because I keep saying that. I mean, we also get lots more about the Time War.
Yeah.
And when I say lots more, it seems impossible to give us much more in 6 minutes because what we'd had before was just the odd line here and there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you can't really count the end of time because... Was that Tennant's last story? Because that's not really about the Time War, even though it's set on the last day. It's not about it. So really, the Time War up to this point is just a collection of a few facts and figures and lots of names of extraordinary, otherworldly sounding weapons and events,
Yes.
situations that Russell had invented. And we can say more about that under the Day of the Doctor, under the main event. But this is Moffat taking what we already know and enlarging on it in interesting, slightly tangential ways.
And just interestingly enough, the director, I was just trying to figure out who directed it, because of course it wasn't directed by Nick Owen, who did the main event. It was John Hayes.
It wasn't really made by the A team, was it? I mean, it was done, I think, on the cheap, without that means to be critical in any way. It was done by sort of B unit or whatever.
Yes, yeah. Apparently this guy, John Hayes, has gone on to, he directed the entire first series of Bancroft, and he's done episodes of Vera and the Dublin Murders, the Sarah Phelps thing that was on recently. So he's gone on to bigger things. But it's quite nice that, as you say, the fact it has got that slightly done on the cheap, that studio bound. It does feel, very nicely like it bridges, like a bridging thing between classic and new version of Who.
It presumably cost a bit more than all of the other, what do you call them, these sort of 5-minute odds and sods.
Minisodes and things.
Yes, minisodes. Because, if only by virtue of the fact that I think almost every single one of the others takes place just on the TARDIS set, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they have spent a bit of money on
Yes,
sets
or they did things where they had either supporting cast or whatever that were already around.
Yeah.
But it's also similar to the ones we'd already had in that it concentrates on character rather than too much action. Oh, I just love it. I want lots more of these.
Yeah, I mean, it's perhaps the first time that we've seen somebody recoil in horror from a mention of the Time Lords or from a realisation of the Time Lords.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I love that moment, and all more so because it isn't really followed up, is it? We'd never had... It fits with what we'd heard before, but we haven't quite seen it explained that simply or viscerally.
Yes,
and it isn't touched on again. So it's very valuable, as well as very exciting.
And
it makes you feel so sorry for lovely Eighth Doctor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That anybody would react that way to him.
Yes, one of the loveliest of all Doctors, eh?
I mean, I mean, you wouldn't be as surprising if it was the 7th, or the War, the Warth, or 9 or 10 or 11. You could imagine any of them eliciting that sort of fear for one reason or another, but not Lovely 8. And this wouldn't exist, of course, if the Day of the Doctor itself had gone the way that Moffat originally planned, i.e. if it had been Mr. Eccleston as the third party, we wouldn't really have needed this. But as it is, it's a bookend. It's that must have been a hell of a year for Moffat, when you, as we later discovered, how much trouble he ended up in, not having actors, not knowing where he's going or which toys he even had to play with.
Yes, yeah.
But then coming up with salvaging something this elegant out of that sort of desperation. He then managed to tell a complete story in one 80-minute episode plus a 6-minute prequel and a few odds and sods at Christmas, and it's all completely self-contained.
I mean, it clearly is an example of necessity being the mother of invention, but and it feels as if the original idea wouldn't have been as good.
Are we still talking about? What are we talking about now?
Well, just
Day
just
or
just
night
just
or-
in terms of if Eccleston had been brought back, and we'd never had the War Doctor.
Well, I'll be getting onto that. Don't you worry.
Okay.
It's a great, it is a great little opportunity that he uses. But it's interesting, well, I guess again we can talk more about the circumstances of production
really?
and so on.
I mean, as much as to understand just what a remarkable piece of work this is, you just have to compare it to, I don't know, Time Crash, which is a bit of fun. A bit of children need fun, so it was never intended to be this. It's not a failure on the part of Time Crash, but it is less convincing as a re-evocation of an earlier Doctor than it's just a bit of flim-flam with in-jokes, metatextual jokes and so on. Whereas this is a real story with weight and pathos and comedy and heartbreaking tragedy in 6 minutes. Did I mention it was only 6 minutes long?
So is it in the nature, do you think, of the Eighth Doctor to refuse to go back in the TARDIS, on a sort of point of principle, when he's decided that he wants to try and talk Kara, is it, down?
That's an interesting one. What is there in the TV movie that would suggest he's that sort of
He's certainly quite impulsive.
impulsively romantic, noble, principled?
And interesting also, I mean, if you were a student of the Big Finish thing, there was a lot of talk of love in that between him and Charlie, but it wasn't the romantic love that you get between the Doctor and Rose later on. It was more a kind of comradely love, or sort of it was somewhat purer anyway in nature.
It was, well, certainly on his side, possibly not. Charlie. Did you get through as far as Scherzo or
Yes.
Rob Shearman's visceral deconstruction of their relationship?
Yeah.
Bloody hell, gives me nightmares.
I only heard it once, and I
news
may
to
go
me.
back to it sometime.
Yes, well, it's certainly in character with the Eighth Doctor from the TV movie, and I would say with the Big Finish portrayal of him up to that point. Of course, Big Finish then, post Night of the Doctor, have I got this right? They started taking him off into darker territory.
Yes.
It's possible they'd already done that. Maybe my dates are wrong here.
So I think the stuff with Sheridan Smith possibly predates this, but the other ones certainly postdate it.
I'm thinking Dark Eyes here.
I think that postdates
but not
it.
go better not go too deeply into this because we'll lose a significant portion of our listenership. However, if you're part of that significant portion of our listenership, go off and listen to some of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's brilliant.
Okay.
And they bring
that.
they bring the Eighth Doctor back again after in the post Dark Eyes, because of course his lifespan keeps getting extended because it's a difficult position they're in, Big Finish. In one way, Night of the Doctor did them a favour because it gave them a definite endpoint. They know where they're heading now. Before then, but because the options were so limitless, it was difficult to pick a course and settle on it. And I think, to be honest, they were in danger of settling on a much darker direction for the Eighth Doctor, which you would not have been able to come back from. But because the Night of the Doctor demonstrated that he was still essentially the same man,
Yes.
if rather worn down by his end, that gave them a way of avoiding going too far. So when they finally join the two together, I hope it tells a nice, coherent story. I think it will.
So interesting also that they choose to regenerate into the sort of young version of John Hurt rather than the one that we see in the rest of it, indicating, I guess, quite a long lifespan for the War Doctor.
Yeah, I think that's probably to the benefit both of the type of the way he wanted to characterise him in Day of the Doctor, and also to give some weight to the Time War itself. Because, of course, if you think about it literally, logically, we've never seen a Doctor age that much. We've seen Doctors who ostensibly lived for hundreds of years, and they don't appear to have aged at all.
No.
So you can. They kind of spoil that by making it clear that he is less than. It has only been a few hundred years for him, not thousands, but If you ignore the numbers, which we probably should, otherwise it drives you mad. You could believe that he was trapped in this bloody war for...
Well, if it's
an
a time
eternity.
war, it could feel to somebody
Yeah.
longer than its ostensible length.
I think it's supposed to suggest something of that ilk.
That's true.
Do we have anything else?
We never really got a version of Time War on screen which was much about time,
True.
No.
which suggests what sort of ripple effects endless rewriting of events, personal histories and universal histories might have.
It almost feels like that would be a perfect Moffat-y thing for him to have done, but
Well, it is interesting, isn't it? Because he drew back from that and just concentrated on the characters in the end, as we'll see when we move on.
But it's certainly I made a note of that for on my notes for Day of the Doctor. I sort of said, "Oh, so this is what a time war looks like, is it?" Because with regard to the
Well, should we talk about this now? Because
attack on Gallifrey and
because not everybody liked the way it was depicted, but I think that a lot of people, well, some people, thought that it was suggesting that the Time War was just laser guns and spaceships and two sides firing at each other across the trenches, the sky trenches, as they say in the Day of the Doctor. But this is just the last day.
yes, indeed.
This is what it's. They've tried all their clever tricks
this is what it's
over
coming down to.
over millennia, and there's nothing left. They're equally matched on that score. So in the end, they do just resort back to type.
It's like a war of attrition, Harry.
I think is what he's saying, because any critic who is saying that Moffat showed it that way because he isn't clever enough to imagine a timey-wimey version of Time War, I think hasn't been
This is
paying
true
attention.
Enough. Yes.
I think the danger is that he would, if he'd gone for it full pelt,
Yeah.
gone and dived into the full implications of a Time War, it would have been completely impenetrable to anybody. When you consider what he did with otherwise much simpler premises.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm rather happy with that side, at least, of the Time War has remained the remit of the old series, where it touches on things that can be seen as some of the opening skirmishes, obviously in Genesis and Remembrance. And,
Absolutely. Yep, nice bit of retconning
Yes, yeah.
from Russell there.
Yeah, because if you imagine the end of Series 6, where all time is happening at the same time or something like that in that last episode of the series, I mean, that I find that utterly impenetrable. For me, that's Moffat at his worst. Whereas this pair of stories is much more easy to digest and enjoyable as a result.
It's not that it's always tricky with his box of tricks, as it were. I think it suffers from a bit of a law of diminishing returns, but on the other hand, he can produce that kind of high concept story and knock it out of the park, still right through to right through the Capaldi era, and and there are individual ones that are, you think that is great. It's just you start to his box of tricks starts to weary you somewhat, and I think so. It's nice to actually see him do this as some of the stuff that comes as close to straightforward storytelling, really, in these two episodes, and certainly compared to the stories that bookend these two on either side, which are absolutely, I would put those down as those would be down at the bottom of my list of Moffat stuff, really. Name and
Time.
Christmas of the Doctor. What is it? Time. Yes, and but yes, and I appreciate again circumstances forcing things that weren't planned at the time, but it's nice that they drew back, and for this, it was the biggest night, and they knew they had a job to do it. It had to be an absolute crowd pleaser for a big audience. Yeah, so I'm glad. Those kind of entertaining instincts, and let's not make it too complicated while having some nice touches took over.
Sure. Well, let's take that opportunity then to step forward and start talking clearly about Day of the Doctor. So it's what now, over 6 years since it was shown. I mean, I think I probably watched it 2 or 3 times when it came out. I don't think I've seen it since 2013. So it was nice for me to go back and revisit it and remember what it was about.
Likewise. Yeah.
Where did you see it, Richard?
I think at home. I think
Old school.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that I watched it as it went out. I think I probably might be an hour or two afterwards. Probably recorded it and then watched it when I was ready. But yeah, I think on the anniversary itself.
And you, Giles?
Um,
Were you by any chance in a room with 3,000 other fans?
Not with 3,000, no.
Oh, was that just me?
So?
Were you next door?
Possibly. I was in a pub with a couple of hundred other fans next to
Next to the Excel
next
Centre,
to the Excel Centre. Yes,
the big
I was at
convention
Jeremy's
was going
too. Yeah.
Yep.
Were you in the
I
screening?
was. Yes, we both went to the big 50th anniversary convention on the Saturday.
Mm.
Yeah, I had been invited to Jeremy's do next door, but to be honest, I like the thought of seeing it with 3,000 other people.
Yes.
So that's what I did.
Yes. Yeah.
The pub was quite busy. We popped round to the pub afterwards where we had
so
a good chat, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah. It was one of those. It was one of those things where I think because they only announced the cinema screenings relatively late in the day.
Yes, that
Yeah,
rather
so-
undercut Jeremy's plans, didn't it?
Yes.
That's his big selling point vanished. And it's probably a good point to mention just how cinematic it is because
Did you see it in 3D?
I didn't. Oh, no, because it wasn't. No, they didn't have 3,000 pairs of 3D glasses. I didn't see it in a real cinema, but it was a big enough screen that.
Yes.
And being with the audience, I know that it worked. The other reason I know it worked is by comparison with Deep Breath, the Capaldi intro story, which they also put in cinemas because this was such a success. They tried it again with an episode that hadn't been written or filmed for that purpose, and it didn't work. And that was just a bit embarrassing. Being in Leicester Square, watching just an ordinary episode of Doctor Who, which people had paid 17 quid for. But no, back to positivity. I do think this is one of the best looking Doctor Who stories ever.
Yeah.
I know there are moments in other stories that approach these heights, but I think it's consistently cinematic in
Oh, definitely. It's directed with
in the
an
right
eye
sort of
that-
ways.
Yes.
It might not have the special lenses and widescreen filters that the last series allegedly had, but
Yes, I can't tell the
it
difference.
has everything else you need.
Indeed.
What? Sorry.
I say I can't tell the difference with these so-called filters and effects.
Well, I know it. Yeah.
But the editing is very cinematic. I mean, I must.
I think that's it's the editing more than anything
yeah.
else.
I must. I'm now going to have to say that I did make a note that was actually somewhat getting on my nerves. Watching it back for this, I found it slightly hitting you on the head with a bag of sand. It was slightly got on my nerves, that all the sort of visual tics in that
Right.
regard, all the little out of focus blurry things and mini flashbacks but they went away eventually.
Well-
It's only really the first half hour or so. That's
I
just
think
there.
he's doing it to help tell the story rather than just to show off. Otherwise, which is
Oh,
which is why they disappear.
Yes,
They-
I kind of, I kind of appreciate that, but don't know. Maybe it's slightly too out of my comfort zone for like what I'm used to in Doctor Who direction. But then it's the kind of thing that gets on my nose in other.
Would you have preferred Chris Clough?
No,
Would you have preferred
and in my
Mervyn Pinfield? No, I don't know why I said Mervyn Pinfield. I just like the name,
Yeah.
but actually he was a rather good director, so I'll take that back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in my defence, I should say that's the kind of thing that also somewhat gets on my nerves in any drama. That sort of
Right.
let's just do a quick jump shot, like have a quick flashy.
I mean,
Here's some mixed up images for 2 seconds and then back to the action.
had we had any Sherlock by this point? Because that's something that somebody was very keen to bring into Sherlock to make it seem modern and exciting.
Yes.
All the timelines are all over the place.
I think it
remember.
must have been because we had that long gap in season 7.
Oh yes,
Yes.
yeah, we'd had.
Of course, which was not connected to Sherlock in any
Absolutely
way.
not.
I think Sherlock started
Scurrilous
2011, didn't it?
Sounds
Maybe?
about right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that when it finally made it to air,
Is this the first time that we see Clara at Coal Hill School?
Yes, it
is. Her latest job.
Which I don't know if it's presumably just a one-off gag for the anniversary at this point, and then having done it, he makes it a plot point in the next series.
Yeah, I guess we're going to come on to, I don't know. So was Bill Russell ever, I
think, I'm sure I've read at some point that he was supposed to have a cameo and was ill or something and couldn't make it down there, which is a shame.
Yeah, great shame.
Yes, because there's a slightly pointless character in there, isn't there, that she's talking to for about 30 seconds.
The one that just is the messenger boy, so yes.
Yeah. The one that looks like a young Peter Serafinovich. Or is that just me? I don't mean that I look like a young Peter Serafinovich.
I didn't notice.
Well,
yes.
Good. That's something for you to go back and check. Do you think that's supposed to be Ian Chesterton? Sir Ian Chesterton, head of the Parents Teach... head of the Governors Association.
Possibly.
Hey, I would have taken what I could get.
Yes.
But as it is, he's on a sign.
Indeed.
Yes, that's true.
But not Barbara. She doesn't get a position.
No, that's a shocker, really.
That's sexist. Everyday sexism.
Yeah.
So yes, presumably just there to be one of a couple of references back to the first story, the first team, the second being just a photograph. I say just a photograph. It's better than not a photograph at all, isn't it? Later on in the Black Archive.
Yes, and we get I Am Foreman as well. Oddly on the side of the school.
Policeman shot and everything, tracking shot and everything.
Yeah. No, I mean,
he must have moved.
They're quick, but they're not perfunctory. They're done with care, and the fact that they're there at all is the point, isn't it? Because they don't have to be. And it's when they're not there that you think, well, why couldn't you have put in a few more? Would it have killed you to put in a few more touches to mark the anniversary, a few more things for the fans? And on this occasion, we don't have to say that because Mr. Moffat is one of us. So, I guess the balance just right between telling a story that is clear and accessible, and yet deviously fanish.
Well, I think given the way that Doctor Who in its later years gleefully trampled all over Coal Hill, Coal Hill and Tossers Lane and various areas anyway, it would be very difficult to go back and do anything that focused more on it other than let's just put it in as a nod and a wink.
Yeah.
So I think it's about the right level for what you'd expect. Although Clara's sudden conversion to teacher is the first of her. Is this the first of her several career jumps?
Well, she's already been childminder, hasn't she?
Random changes.
Yeah, I think
rewrites the character and her motivation. And,
well, because of the childminder thing, I think it's less jolting than it would be otherwise. But it is the first sign that she's fulfilled her initial narrative function, and he doesn't really know what to do with her next. Because apart from one brief allusion to her having seen the other Doctors, the whole initial Clara mystery, Impossible Girl, there have been millions of her throughout the Doctor's time, that's never referred to ever again, is it?
No. Indeed.
And you might have thought that could have been a part of the plot here. It's interesting, possibly deliberate, I don't know, or more likely, considering what Mr. Moffat said about the rushed circumstances of writing this. But I mean, that could easily be part of this plot. She saves the day just by being Clara, just by being empathetic, clever, thoughtful, kind Clara. She doesn't use any of her timey-wiminess or inherent magic gimmick, which is interesting because another writer might easily have had her use some of her knowledge from having lived through the whole of the Doctor's time stream to.
But perhaps that's more on message.
Some contribution that nobody else could have done.
Yeah, maybe that's more on message for Doctor Who, though, which is about the fact that ordinary people can kind of rise above. Yeah,
especially in the new series where the plucky human companion is the one that keeps him down, brings him down to earth and keeps him a good man. Yeah. So I suppose that's a more important message than having her being a walking MacGuffin.
Well,
which gets transferred to Billie Piper, doesn't it? In a
Yeah.
sense.
although quite elegantly, I think.
Which very elegantly, because we don't have to ruin Rose's character here. We just get a nice visual callback for the viewers without.
Yeah, I mean, so although I'm going to say with that, Billie Piper couldn't look less like Rose if she tried. I mean, there's a line in it that sort of says, "Oh, you've taken on the likeness of Rose," but for me,
Hippie.
we're only talking
In a hippie phase.
We're only talking 6 years since she left the first time, and a few years anyway, 5 years since the second time, and yet she seems to be almost unrecognisable.
Really? I was wondering if you were going to say that.
To my eye, anyway.
You mean Billie Piper physically, not just the way they've dressed her, the accent? You think she's changed that much? That it's not worth.
I mean, I was quite happy watching Billie Piper do her thing, but I just didn't in any way suggest Rose to me at all. I mean,
there are these allusions to Bad Wolf, of course.
yes,
which
that's true. That's
true. Which Moffat can write without any worry whatsoever about making it tie in, because it never made any sense the first time round. But when in those scenes at the end of Parting of the Ways, when Rose is the Bad Wolf, is she speaking? Is she posh Rose then as well? I mean, is this voice something completely new? Billie Piper being Billie Piper.
Well, it's certainly her third accent.
Rather than doing
in 3 sets of performances.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she does. She isn't that dissimilar from the Bad Wolf, but I mean, I don't think there's meant to be any great. I'm not sure whether, unless I've missed something, I don't think there's meant to be any great connection to her other than perhaps the MacGuffin, the moment, is picking up on something that's rippling back through the Doctor's history. And
I'm just using that to counter Richard's grumbling that she's nothing like that Rose remembered, because
I've no problem with that.
I still think she looks like Billie Piper, and if the voice isn't even completely unique because people remember it from the end of Parting of the Ways, then I really don't know what he's talking about. Do you?
I just don't have an issue with it. I think she is different. I don't think she's physically that different, but on the other hand, she had changed, and we know she'd changed, because obviously it does rather great when she tries to recreate Rose at the end of season 4.
Yeah, if you want to moan about Billie Piper, Richard, let's all just have a go at the season 4 version when she's trying in some teeth for somebody else.
Whereas, so I think in some ways I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that they left Rose off where. They left Rose, but thought, this is a clever way of getting back Billie Piper and doing a bit of a callback, and again, obviously, it's her success being one of the biggest things from the new series. It was understandable they wanted her involved, but it's a clever way of doing it, I think.
To look at it thematically, it's the first of the important ways in which this story differs from the previous anniversary special.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, there are many ways in which it's similar, which I assume we're going to come on to, because that's a very easy way to pass the time talking about. But the ways in which it's different are necessitated by the fact that this is not 10 or 20 years on, it's 50, and there are so many more characters. They would need to be to do something of the same structure of the 5 Doctors, it would need to be 5 hours long. You can't do that, so you're really just picking the greatest hits now. And even then,
I may bore you with my 50th anniversary idea later.
Yeah, as its greatest hits, we could have had the real Rose back, I suppose. I'm just thinking this through now as I'm saying it. So I guess it's more a function of the fact that you're going to have one old companion. She's the most memorable, but it must have been a conscious decision not to use Rose, but to use Billie Piper instead, because Rose is such a tangled web already. And indeed, most of them are, aren't they? Apart from Martha, but you wouldn't have picked her, would you? You can't have Donna.
Yeah,
you can't have Amy and Rory because all the companions disappear, leave in such extreme circumstances. They're all in different universes or whatever.
So I think unless you pluck someone out of their time stream in the traditional Who manner, but then I don't. I can't begrudge Stephen wanting to do something different. And not wanting to retread ground that had been done by Bob Baker, Dave Martin and Terence Dix before, in that regard. In
a sense, it's more like the Phantoms from the end of the 5 Doctors, because it's just a nod to the fact that we want to see these actors again, and we don't really care. We're not primarily concerned with narrative logic. We just want to see them. and feel that warm glow,
Yeah.
or not if you're Richard.
No, I mean,
Just
so I like Billie Piper's performance in this. I mean, she seems to me to be more obviously a woman in this and less of a girl. I mean, Rose is a young woman, whereas this character that she's playing is much more mature, I think, and it's an interesting choice. It's an interesting way that she's playing it, an interesting character that she's playing. So I'm very happy with what Billie Piper's done. I guess what I'm saying is that she doesn't really remind me in any way of Rose.
I don't know if we know if Moffat's on record as going into too much detail about how he constructed the story, but I'm assuming that he came up with, I don't know, which do you think came first, the concept of the moment as the conscience of the super weapon, or the need to find something for Billie Piper to play, or do you think they were involved in tandem? Maybe he doesn't even remember. I was about to say that I thought possibly the idea of the moment might have come from the necessity to find her something to do, but I think it's more likely that both ideas were floating around in his brain.
I suppose it's more obvious that if it's Eccleston that she's playing with, that if he's stuck with the moment, then it would take on the form of Rose, because...
That's a good point. That opens up another can of worms.
Oh, mind you, it's still looking forward, though, isn't it? Rather than looking back.
I suppose there just have been a memory loss. Well, there is a memory loss line anyway, at the end for the War Doctor. And I guess just from purely looking at it from a narrative point of view, it's just from a structural point of view, you need someone to pair off with John Hurt for fairly large chunks of the story. The two Doctors are effectively each other's companions for quite long. Yeah, because it's really the way it's structured. I guess Clara has her own plot with the Zygons.
She does, yes.
She's mostly at the heart of the Zygon plot, although she's weaving in and out of the Doctor's plot. Yeah, and then the two Doctors are kind of each other's ersatz companions, which is an interesting way of doing it compared to what we've seen in the previous ways that anniversary specials have been handled, where they've kept Doctors paired off with companions either from their own, either their own companions or mixed and matched, or someone as a stand-in, and then you need someone for. And I think it says a lot for Billie that they cast her and were able to put her up against John Hurt, really, and have someone who can kind of hold her ground.
Yeah. I mean, to return to the theme of just how much you can stuff into your 80 minutes. I mean, who knows how long Moffat was aiming for when he wrote it, but he's clearly trying to keep the numbers down even further than he has to. If you've got three Doctors, you could give them one companion each, but he's chosen not to. He's looked at the available slots for taking people from, and he's taken 10 from the period when he's travelling alone, so he doesn't have to worry about that. And obviously Eccleston would have been pre-Rose, which transfers across to the War Doctor. So he's choosing to keep it as simple as possible. But I like the fact he's having fun with it. I like the fact that, as you say, they all need to be paired up with somebody. And he pairs up the 10th Doctor. He uses the opportunity to resolve some bizarre continuity issues from the 10th Doctor's era, the Queen Elizabeth stuff.
Yes.
Which is... And to give Tennant a go with the Zygons, because he's obviously been going on and on about it during his time there. It's interesting that he's still able to be playful. But perhaps that was the desperation. Perhaps he... I think when you've got this sort of weight... Also, when you've got this sort of weight of expectation, this is the 50th anniversary, it's got to be 2.5 times better than the 5 Doctors. How do you do that? You can't make it bigger. You just got to make it better. Yeah. And if you know you can't make it that much bigger, you just relax and say, well, let's not even try. Let's approach this from a different angle. I was going to say, Giles, yes and no to what you said about it being distinctly different from the earlier versions. The interplay between the Doctors. It does remind me quite a lot of the 3 Doctors. I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, really, that the way they're treated as characters. The latest 2, you've got the latest one and his immediate predecessor.
Oh, in that regard, yes.
Bantering and bickering. The one before that, ish, if you squint, being very paternal.
Yes.
So he's taken that...
Yeah, no, I was just
it's
thinking...
Probably quite true. It's probably quite true to what the original 3 Doctors would have been like if Hartnell had been there in person, actually.
Yes, yeah.
It'd probably been having a go at bow ties and frilly and cravats and what have you.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's one of those nice things that that the War Doctor also gets to be the voice of the grumpy old fan, as it were, to some extent. That there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek stuff there. It's a wonder he doesn't have a gag about the windows being the wrong size.
Oh God,
But,
well, he manages to fit in just about every other in-joke that's possible,
Yeah.
which is nice. Because he does them in quite a clever way. There's almost too many, but
not quite.
has anyone else made a list of them?
Well, I wrote down a few.
I didn't make a list.
The War Doctor having a go at the way they're wielding their sonic screwdrivers like
That's the main.
water pistols or assembling cabinets with them. Calling Lieutenant Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it is a very dodgy accent, isn't it? And so it's a nice way of ribbing him about it.
I mean, Moff takes going on about, I don't know.
Matt gets
It's not
called
so much
Mr. Chin at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's not so much an in-joke as just pushing the line of how much you can abuse your actors, which Moff does quite a lot.
Yes.
Going up, his disgust at the timey-wimey phrase, you sound like children. Is there going to be a lot of kissing in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all there for us. It's all there for the fans who know, well, some of them are for the old-time fans, addressing our observations about the way the series has changed, and some are just for any fan.
And then
been
there's
paying
the
attention.
sort of more serious one about never cruel or cowardly.
Ah, yes.
Going back to your talk about, there's not very many companions, and interestingly, he invents a new one. So not only does he not bring back all that many, he then plucks Osgood out of nowhere and bungs her into this story.
Yes.
And yet, she's a brilliant version of what RTD tried to do with Lee Evans, and it didn't work at all, really. This character, I mean, whether it's Ingrid Oliver or whether it's Moffat's writing or some fantastic alchemy of the two, it works really well. I mean, there is comedy relief in there, but there's also something a bit more than that.
Yep, I wonder why, because I've got my fan brain on, I'll constantly approach this in the wrong angle. I'm thinking, well, could that have been as you say, she's an Ursat's companion. But you can't start putting in other companions, because then where do you stop? Who do you choose?
But then she doesn't get paired off with. She doesn't really get paired off with the Doctors, much as she's a Doctor fangirl.
So is she there more to represent the viewer than?
Well, yeah. I mean, she has her superpower as well, I suppose, of being able to do the analysis and come up with, work out the Zygons are smashed at the statues.
So it's interesting that here, while he's got so many other things that he needs to do, he achieves incidentally. I'm going to say effortlessly again, because I like it. I want to be positive. He manages to solidify the new unit setup, which has been floundering. There's been some good stuff, but it hasn't really settled.
No.
We've had quite a lot of stabs at it
Yes.
over the previous 8 years.
Indeed.
So he brings, but very few returning characters, we bring forward Kate Stewart and introducing Osgood. Finally, we've got it. We've cracked it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
We go back and over to Tower of London for the Christmas invasion. And again, nice callbacks.
I think really this is like the most Moffat-y story you could get, because all this stuff is just in his head. It's all up there, and he's able to make these links under pressure. Under pressure, because it's all in there. Everything he's got available to him. He might as well be playing with little toys like on his desk, like he is in the Five-ish Doctors.
Yeah.
Because conceptually, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
But it's very disciplined as well, rather than just grabbing the first handful of toys you can out of the box blindfolded and think, that'll do.
Yes.
Yes, I think just sort of going back slightly to a slight note of critique or criticism. I think the only thing, and it's not so much directed at this as it is at where where things were left at the end of series 7 proper, is just the way that they left things at the end of Name of the Doctor on what appeared to be a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Does, rather than leave there having to be a somewhat egregious info dump of stuff about John Hurt's Doctor at the start of in the National Gallery scenes near the start of this. Right.
Of all the things I thought you were going to say about the lack of continuity between the end of the previous series and this one, that wasn't. Yeah, I take your. I don't think it's a problem for this.
No,
are you saying you'd have rather had that done?
They couldn't start this with There's no way. This is for massive. The biggest audience Doctor Who's ever going to get, possibly. And I can't remember what it got, but it was it was clearly going to be a blockbuster thing that a lot of people would be tuning in for, and you weren't going to start it by.
I'll come back to that because in some ways it's not. It doesn't really stand out to me as a scene that you've had to insert because you've introduced a new Doctor that nobody knows. It doesn't feel that out of place and egregious to me. I was going to say that the opening, like the first act, maybe, isn't structured too differently from the Five Doctors. It starts it's episodic with opens with the current Doctor, and then you get little sketches for some of the other main characters. You get it's longer than the few minutes that we spend with each of the other Doctors in five before they're time scooped. But it's the same sort of theory. It's just we get introduced to the War Doctor with the tone that fits his character and the story he's going to be telling. Then a little sketch of the 10th Doctor. Again, the tone changes. It's the complete opposite, but it sets him up nicely. And you can imagine it might have carried on in that way if there had been another X number of Doctors to fit in. Main difference being that these flashbacks are part of the narrative, and we're led through. We're not cutting randomly. We're led through it from character to character, place to place. I haven't read the book, but I gather it. I gather it does even more, in inverted commas, clever things with the narrative, which not everybody's found necessary. Because I think it's clever enough as it is on screen. Without have either of you read the novel?
I haven't, I'm afraid. No.
No.
Now you make me want to find out what it's like.
I believe it's reordered. But I like the way it's told here. But I do. This is a good time to move on to what it would have been like if Mr. Eccleston said yes, if they hadn't offended him in whatever way they did. Allegedly. Or if the storyline had done the character of the Ninth Doctor justice, which apparently he now says it didn't. I remember.
Eccleston says this, does he?
So what did I? I think so.
That's interesting.
I think he said that most recently. He's starting opening up about things, and he in terms of why he left the program originally, he says it was personality clashes and things he didn't agree with, but he doesn't say there's anything like that here. He just says he read the script, considered it, but didn't. I think he said didn't do the character justice. So yeah, the elephant in the room with this story is exactly what happened with Mr. Eccleston, but I'm not particularly interested in discussing why he chose not to be in it. What I'm more interested in is what the script was like beforehand. I think at the time did they try and play down the idea that it was originally written for 9?
Definitely, yes.
It's fully out in the open now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember hearing rumours, which among all my amazing Uber fan friends, no, not really, among the few people I knew who had people who knew people who knew people. The rumour from Cardiff was that he'd rewritten this in a panic and put very little effort into it, and it was just mostly shortly before it was broadcast, that it was mostly just the Ninth Doctor's dialogue with very little alteration. So bearing that in mind, watching it, that's clearly not true.
Yeah, I find that very hard to believe.
I'm prepared to believe that the structure of the plot is the same. But it has been rewritten. He has invented a new character. Of course it has. I didn't really believe it at the time. I wasn't quite sure why so many people who should know better seemed to have any faith in this whatsoever. Just a strange little memory from back in the day. But more importantly, I think the War Doctor is one of the best things about this. I like the character. I like the idea of him. I mean, yes, we could take him, if you can take him out of this story and talk about whether it is a good thing to do to the Doctor Who mythos, to continuity, to muck it up in this way. I know somebody will be very upset about it. Not just the people who would rather it had been Paul McGann. That's one issue. The people, the mucking up the numbering, that's another issue. But you can't take him out of this story because this story is about him, and that's one of the things that confuses me, because it seems thematically it's all about the War Doctor. It runs through it like a stick of Blackpool Rock
Yes, yeah.
or Brighton Rock, one or the other, either. And watching it again earlier, I just could not imagine it would have had anywhere near the same weight if it had been the Ninth Doctor. And in many ways, it wouldn't have worked. If you take all the points, all the thematic elements that are specific to the War Doctor, the dialogue, the characterization, you're not left with very much. And there's no particular... It feels, it's when you start looking into it that this becomes obvious. On paper, you can think, well, of course, yes, before you invented Hurt, you would have had the Ninth Doctor as the one who ended the Time War, as we all thought it was, as he said it was. But all the stuff about the other Doctors trying to forget him, not acknowledging him as the Doctor, that's the best stuff. That's the stuff that has the most impact, and you'd lose all of that. I don't doubt there was a version with that missing, but I think that's one of the best examples of some... What did you say earlier? You came up with a snappy new phrase for it, Richard.
I instantly forgot it again.
You've been writing an extremist kind of...
Yes.
Like invention, necessity being the mother of...
Necessity being the mother of all invention. Yeah, it's amazing. Where did you get that from, Rich?
Frank Zappa.
Anyone agree with me? Vehemently disagree?
No, I absolutely agree. Richard?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because if looking back on the previous anniversaries, if the Five Doctors were wiped, I mean, it would be a great shame because it's a fun story, but it wouldn't actually change anything. I mean, you wouldn't miss it because it's just there to be the anniversary special. If the Three Doctors were wiped, then it wouldn't make much sense of Omega and the beginnings of the Time Lord race, which are referred to a lot thereafter. And this is kind of in that mould. It's creating a whole bunch of new continuity, new plot which is built on later on, or maybe built on later on. So yeah, it has an important place in the Doctor Who history as a result.
I think...
Yes, I mean, specifically the things it does right at the end that carry forward, like I think we discussed the other week, the fact Three Doctors, the Doctor gets his time travel back, Five Doctors, the less successful, you're going on the run from your own people.
Yes, Five Doctors really restates its own...
But here, I mean, it sets up the story about the Gallifrey still being there, but where, which is followed to greater or lesser success over the next 3 years.
Yes, maybe we should just leave it at that.
Well, look, I mean, it's set up really nicely. They could have done something good.
The setup's great, yeah.
The fact they didn't is more the fault of the rest of the series than this particular story.
Yeah, again, you look at this story on its own merits. And I think the other thing that we shouldn't underestimate, it's interesting, I was thinking about the fact that, again, we have a Lethbridge Stewart in the absence of Nick. We have Kate Stewart in the anniversary story, which is a nice touch. But then I was thinking, actually, and I know in the last one I waxed lyrical about how I think Nick is the absolute heart and soul of arguably both of the other stories, but certainly of the Five Doctors. He's the best thing in it, and his pairing with Troughton is glorious. And I actually, I think Hurt, for all that he's meant to be this Doctor, and that he gets to, Moffat gets to have his cake and eat it to some extent because of the fact that by necessity, this is the Doctor who hasn't actually pressed the button yet.
Yeah,
and that's commented.
Yes.
That's commented on. They hang a lampshade on it at a couple of points. So he's not actually as racked with guilt as the other two are by what happened. And so in some ways, he gets to play it lighter, despite being the Doctor who's bound up in the war. And I think he's very much the, again, he's the heart and soul of, he gets to be the Nick Courtney of this one, really. And
Yes, I mean,
I
it is.
cannot imagine Eccleston quite having much as I'm sure he would have done something very interesting
Well,
with it, I think it would have been a lot heavier. I think he'd have... Can't imagine him carrying it off with quite the same lightness.
I think he'd have overplayed the heaviness and gurned his way through the comedy, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, yes, he does have his cake and eat it, doesn't he? Because this war doctor who is set up, his path is set up in such a doom-laden way in the 6-minute McGann episode. And he's been through hundreds of years of interminable war. He's seen untold death and destruction. It's worn him down. You can see it etched in his face. But he hasn't lost his sense of humour. He gets it back immediately, which is cheating. But thank God for that. You don't really want a completely doom-laden, introspective doctor dragging down your anniversary story.
I mean, you believe he's capable of pressing the button. I think that's the important part.
Yes.
So I think from that point of view, he gets the characterisation right, which means that when they pull back from it later on, it is more of a surprise. It's not like it were Davison, and you'd think, well, surely he never would press the button in the first place.
And he paints the difference between the three of these with fairly deft strokes, as Tennant is still angsty, still hasn't got over this, and he's shocked to see that the 11th Doctor has. So he thinks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't labour the points, but it's in there for people for new series fans who enjoy actually what treating the Doctor like he's a character. Can you imagine? An evolving character. Who would have thought?
Well, it's tricky. I mean, with Tennant, Moffat falls back on a couple of his greatest hits, as it were. There's certainly bits of. Oh yeah, I remember when he had a machine that went ding when there was stuff, as it were. Which has been done in Plink. And what was the other one? That was when he does the speech to the rabbit, when he does the very RTD sort of. I'm the Doctor, I'm 900 years old, and yes, you're a rabbit.
Portentous, yeah.
But which is fair enough, because you're playing to what people's memories of the character are as well. But yeah, that's a good point about about the fact that his interplay with the 11th in that regard is quite well done. One thing that's slightly grated with me that feel free to pull me up on this, but there is a moment when Clara says something to War Doctor, like that he doesn't stop, that the Doctor is always talking about the day he pressed the button, or the what he did. And I was thinking, well, was he really? Yeah.
Well,
and
maybe not to her, but he had been on and off over the audience.
Well, yes,
will believe that, because that's how we feel.
Yes, yeah.
Oh God, yes, doesn't he?
But again, that slightly is contrary to the suggestion that there's that 10th has issue. 10th has a
true.
A contrast of 10th is the one that's angsty about it, and 11th is the one that's trying to move on with his life. A bit.
I mean, it's a bit like the Starsky and Hutch thing, where they allude to something happening off screen that you never actually see on screen, and that some character suddenly appears who they claim has been their best buddy for the last 10 years, and you've never seen them in the series, but you just have to accept the conceit of it, I suppose.
I've ticked off most of my important points, even if I'm afraid to say this is what you just sound disappointed. Say, oh really? I thought you were just warming up to them.
No. I mean, it's all been good, and we don't have to go on for
hang on.
I
thought something earlier. Okay, there's one more thing we should talk about. I haven't got any notes about it. Can I give us a dodgy segue? So we've discussed the fact that it is a very important, weighty cornerstone in the Doctor Who mythos, but it's also, as we've alluded to before, a nice, relatively accessible piece of television for your mass audience. And I think one of the things that exemplifies that is that it isn't 80 minutes of pure Time Lord, Dalek, Gallifrey, timey-wimey angst. It's got a fun thing with Queen Elizabeth and the Zygons in it.
Yeah.
It's really like two stories playing at the same time.
Yes, although it's probably
and they do zigzags back and forth between the two, and you could almost, if you view it very superficially, think that they aren't connected and that it's cheating. But then if you pay a bit more attention, you realise that they're connected thematically.
Oh,
and that is
absolutely. That's what I was
at
gonna
the
say.
crux, at the end of Act 2 moment, whatever, where Kate is about to make the same decision on her own scale as the War Doctor did, which is a clever way to bring the two together. In case you're wondering,
Yes, I agree. It's nicely done, the mirroring thing there.
but you could strip the two away. You could sort of re-edit them into two 40-minute stories where the Zygon plot is fully dealt with on Earth, and the Time Lord story on its own would make slightly less sense. But you could sort of do it. So I think that's a very, very neat trick indeed.
But obviously, the resolution of the Zygon threat, and that acts as the catalyst for
It does
the resolution of the Time Lord's story as well. So it's, as you say, that end Act 2 thing. It's very much it's a as we said with the Five Doctors, that this does its own thing because Moffat was sitting down to write a feature length special, so he can do things structurally. He can go for a different kind of structure from what you'd normally have in the episode,
And again,
in the constraints.
For all I think I've already explained how much I like 3 and 5 Doctors, but this is a better piece of work on almost every level, and it does have its cake and eat it, doesn't it? It manages to be a very good example of an ordinary Doctor Who story, while also being stuffed to the gunnels with weighty fan service.
Yeah.
And being something as you said, you can't take out of the Doctor Who continuity. It's absolutely vital.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. It's a bit like, I mean, it's sort of what you want out of your Christmas special telly. It's both a nod to the season, but it's also the best example of its type, and it's weighty on its own account too. I mean, you don't often get all those three things coming together, but in this case, it does.
Yeah, I suppose some of Russell's stories do the same, but as you might expect, it's just cleverer here. I mean, the most obvious comparison, I suppose, is The End of Time, which also balances a slightly smaller scale Earthbound story with a universe-shattering Gallifrey story. But
doesn't work as well though. For some reason,
I haven't watched
I didn't want to be the one to say that, but it's not as good as this.
I haven't watched it for years, so I'm quite intrigued to go back and watch it again. Now I kind of feel like I fancy watching that.
If we can find something to link it with,
absolutely, yes.
There you go. There's your task, Giles.
Yes, yeah.
Find a reason for us to want to watch it.
The Zygons aren't shiny enough. There you go. I've been trying to think of something negative to say about it.
There we go. Yes.
So I mean, I was just going to say very briefly about the Zygons that, I mean, although I am relatively partial to the Zygon two-parter that comes up later in the series, it does feel as if everything important that happens in that story is dealt with here, but kind of, without all the fuss and quite quickly.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but maybe, I mean, that could be just a side effect of Moffat doing his usual thing of throwing so many ideas in.
I think
he does do justice to the whole concept of the two sides having to find some being forced to find some common ground.
Yeah.
But it goes so quickly that I can understand why he might want to revisit it, and that's what he always does, doesn't he? He's always sketching out an idea in a way that most of us would be delighted with, and then thinking, no, there's more to this, and going back and redoing it more fully.
I like the Zygon invasion and inversion story as well, and I think that's that works very well. But then that's got a very different remit, because although this is there to the Zygon story is something of a homily, whereas the in this instance, and it's there to propel the sort of resolution of the Time Lord story, I think, really. Whereas the two-parter stands on its own grounds and is something about is something that is about fundamentalism and
Sure.
immigrants and stuff like that. Really, it seems to be the
Yeah. Yes, they've seen a way to. There's more mileage in this situation coming at it from a slightly different angle.
yes, although it does very much. And again, it more or less revisits the moment MacGuffin as well in its way with the two boxes, to Clara's resolution, as I remember. But
anything else mildly negative? I mean, the bit where we actually get our 13 doctors doesn't make a whole heap of sense. But
Yeah,
I try not to think too closely about the logistics of how how you go back in time, get these people involved in current plan without them remembering it, or without it affecting. Yeah, just don't. There's no
to be
point in
honest,
going there.
it feels
looks
pointless.
good.
It feels pointless to me for the reason that why is it 13 and not 14 or 15 or 27 or whatever.
Well, would you have been happy if it stopped at 11, as it were? Sorry, I mean if it stopped at the current Doctor, without that being explained, but suggesting they can't go into the future. Is it only the arbitrary nature of how many there are beyond Matt Smith that bothers you?
I think to be honest, it would have made more sense if it was just the three of them that had been in the story.
Yeah.
But also the fact they project it forward to Capaldi, but then don't include any others. I mean, obviously they don't know that there's any others to come, but nonetheless, from a story point of view, it doesn't make much sense.
Oh well. I don't think it's one. It doesn't give me the feeling of something that he was building up to. I think it's feeling like a bit of an afterthought. Or hang on, maybe I could use this to get the rest in there.
It's like a bit of the Five Doctors tacked into the Day of the Doctor, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because he does do the thing. It revisits the thing from earlier with the that they have the, which doesn't end up going anywhere with regards to the sonic screwdriver having been programmed and worked.
I could have brought that up earlier under negatives. Yeah,
and having been working on this for 400 years.
My problem with that is that they spend quite a lot of time building up to that, and it's played completely straight. Like it's a character moment for the three of them to work out what they have in common and work together, stop bickering and work together. And to undermine it with the door not being locked is funny, but it never makes me laugh because it's just undercuts.
Yeah.
I just think it's a joke too far, and that moment would have been better if they'd actually achieved something.
But anyway, yes. But it seems to me that that's the same. You have the same thing, but they don't explore where or how or why it's been done. It would have been better if it was.
Maybe is that there to set this up? Is that explicit, or is that just? I don't think
it's. Now you got me wondering, but I don't think it's explicit. We'll happily take reader corrections if Moffat does hang a lampshade on the fact they're doing the same thing. But it strikes me as you could embed something in the TARDIS programming that it had been working on since it was stolen from Gallifrey.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much to make that explicit.
And then bring it online then. But I don't think it does. I might have blinked and missed it because the rate at which. One other minor niggle that's struck me watching it. There's an awful lot of secret rooms and secret galleries in this. You've got the undergallery, you've got the Black Archive, and you've got at least a passing mention of the weapons store. I can't remember what they call it on Gallifrey. That the Doctor's stolen the moment from. It's a bit like.
Is that a bit of thematic consistency, or?
I'm not sure. It's.
So there is one more important thing. We do get an extra Doctor, of course, having had the discipline not to put Mr. McGann in here because it doesn't fit his character and so on and so forth, and none of the others because they don't look right. He throws all that out the window when Tom Baker agrees to appear.
Yes.
In a scene which you could, to be fair, cut out.
Yes.
But you wouldn't want to. Because it's lovely. Anyone else got anything more incisive to say than lovely?
Well, he's there to deliver a little moment of realisation for Matt's Doctor, but as you say, that could have easily been written into it. That could have easily been reached in some other way, I guess, as well.
It's nice, I think, because it's right at the extreme end of when you could have invited Tom back. I mean, I think if they tried to do it now, he's too elderly to pull it off. But just at that moment, he was able to do it, and it was a great end to that story. It was a kind of another Five Doctor-ish sort of a touch. I mean, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense in its own right, but then we will be prepared to wave that away, I guess. Is he the past? Is he the future? Is he just someone who looks like him?
It's potentially another big idea, but whereas the War Doctor is carefully thought through, crowbarred in, and then polished off so that it's watertight. The idea of this new extra Doctor we hadn't seen. Whereas here, it's left purposely vague who he is, whether there could be more of these. And it's nice to have some mystery in Doctor Who again.
Yes, it'd be nice if Matt didn't remember. I don't think that. I'm trying to remember it because it goes straight from this to the sort of dream voiceover thing, doesn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So I was just thinking because it would be kind of nice if, given the rules of Doctors meeting each other so much as we understand them, it would be nice if we saw the meeting, but then Matt didn't. The 11th Doctor didn't remember it. Like it faded from his memory. And who knows? It may do, but maybe it's all covered in the book.
It's a shame that Moffat didn't give Tom the line, "It was the end, but the moment had been prepared for."
No.
But anyway, no, maybe not. I think you're doing a great job of pretending you hadn't heard that, Paul.
Oh, you caught me out.
Yeah. I like the going back a bit earlier, the code name Chroma thing.
I was going to say there's a couple of other lovely little that one's nice, and there's followed up immediately with the unit dating gag, isn't it?
Yeah.
The space-time telegraph is also in there, which is
Oh
nice.
yes,
that's thrown in.
Do you know what? I hadn't even noticed that until watching it tonight. I don't know. They went by so fast.
Yeah, and of course it's a Zygon's throwback, isn't it, as well? Which is nice
Oh yeah. And then of course we've got a whole wall full of photoshopped, made-up encounters between companions, and I love the randomness of the fact that the only one we see with any clarity next to the original TARDIS team, which is what the camera is focusing on, is Mike Yates and Sarah Kingdom, which is possibly the most random pairing you could get.
Absolutely.
And who knows what else there is on the rest of that board, but some accident of the prop department just positioned that one.
Yeah, I guess.
Unless it's Mike Yates and that woman out of Upstairs Downstairs.
Oh well, yes, no, you just reminded me of the gag that Moffat wanted to put in but couldn't. Was it he couldn't get the rights?
What was
He was going to have posters to the 60s Dalek films and suggest that they were fictionalised versions in this universe of what people had heard of the Doctor's real adventures. Or something. I've just sucked all the fun out of it with that description. But anyway, it would...
well, it's time for
that might have been peak Moffat.
It's time for the obligatory gag about the Mike Yates Sarah Kingdom storyline is surely out there for Big Finish to be figuring out a solution to, if they haven't done so already.
I don't know why they haven't leapt on that.
Well, since they seem to have managed to spin a separate existence for Sarah Kingdom out of somewhere, haven't they?
Have you heard any of them? Don't knock it till you've heard.
No, I haven't.
Tried
So
it.
I wouldn't. But
some of their best stuff.
Yeah, I'm just constantly amazed at and slightly befuddled at their ingenuity and spotting these tiny continuity gaps whenever you think, oh yeah, wait. And the other thing that I was going to say is nice, and it's more of a thematic callback than a direct continuity reference. But I thought, okay, I spotted. Of course, we have a callback to Rose in terms of the Zygons having lost their planet in the first days of the Time War.
Yep.
With regards to so they've suffered the same fate as the Autons, the Nestines.
Yes, I guess that also explains their. Hang on, I was going to say that links back to the Terror of the Zygons, but does it? Or are they still in contact with their home world in that story? But they're refugees, aren't they? Rather than invaders.
Yes.
That's kind of built into their DNA from the beginning. Clever.
Well, Time War.
It's one retcon after another, isn't it?
Yes, so Time War. So I think we can assume that anything that happened to them, the fact they're on the run from, or trying to relocate from their planet in the late 16th century, can be put down to the Time War.
Yes. But they're still not shiny enough.
Yeah, and Queen Elizabeth is able to get rid of a Zygon, apparently.
Yes, apparently so.
No.
Take care of herself, that girl.
Girl power.
Bit like, oh no, it's the other way around. I was going to say Harry with the pitchfork, but he is the Zygon in that case, but it still ends up tumbling off.
Are we petering out?
Kind of.
I think we might be, yes.
How can we end with a bang?
Well, feels like we ought to...
Well, I mean, go on.
No, I was just going to say, do we have anything further to say about how anniversary specials have changed down the...
Oh, yeah, maybe...
Down the years.
Do you want to cue us up for that, Richard? Although we might not have. But
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I'll read you out the couple of sentences that I wrote after watching The Day of the Doctor, and then we'll see where that leads if we've got something else. So I wrote very witty, very bold, very imaginative, utterly brilliant. The pinnacle of New Who, I said. That's possibly a little bit harsh on the other writers, but it kind of, that's how I felt the moment I'd stopped watching it.
yeah, you could well be right. It's a delight.
I wouldn't... Yes, I thoroughly enjoy it, but I enjoy it more as being an unabashed RTD fanboy. I'd rather take it as being like Moffat at his best because he's channeling his somewhat more populist instincts and reining back on it and some other things. I wouldn't quite put it up there with some of Russell's best, but
I think it's the perfect fusion of the two. That's whether it be deliberate or because necessity is the mother of invention, apparently.
So I've heard.
And in terms of how it compares and contrasts,
yes, well, that's the question.
with other anniversary stories, I think it cherry picks a few of the things that work nicely in the previous anniversary stories and adds quite a lot of new ideas of its own. Who knows? It's certainly not going to be a template for any future anniversary stories. Certain things may be cherry picked from here yet again. But I think what it does is tells us that an anniversary story doesn't have to be about trying to get together as many, all of the former Doctors and Companions and monsters, or indeed as many as possible. It can be about picking a representative sample and the characters that tell the story you want to tell, or vice versa.
Yes, in fact, we've just said that the one of the less effective parts is when he tries to do that right at the very end.
Yeah. Yes, that's probably going to be the last time we see that, if only because the numbers will get too big. 13, I don't know. I mean, that's maybe too fanciful, but the 12 of them look quite nice arranged there. But once you start getting beyond that, it's going to look cluttered, even on a widescreen TV.
Yeah. Gallifrey, obviously, you've got to have Gallifrey in an anniversary special.
Yes, that's true.
Seems to be. Yeah, we're waiting for someone to break the mould on that score.
And a Lethbridge Stewart. Thus far. The bickering amongst doctors thing becomes it is amped up every time we have one of these multi-doctor story kind of things. It tends to be brought up another level. I think.
Yeah.
Feel like the Five Doctors played off the success of the interplay between Troughton and Pertwee and the Three Doctors, even though it doesn't have them together for very long. And but we know they love to play up to that for the fans anyway. And
it's a touch manufactured, isn't it? Here, in that
because they're not really that different, are they?
With 2 and 3, I mean, clearly they got on together, and John and Pat did promotional work together. I mean, they didn't hate each other, but they rubbed each other up from time to time. It's not really clear that Tennant and Smith would have done the same thing.
No, and yes,
this is true. You get the impression that they're two professional actors who are, and as you say, it's the characters aren't so much more different.
No, they're not. Which is perhaps why the Hurt Doctor thinks they might both be the current Doctor's companions. Oh, and the other thing this story tells us that every anniversary tale must include the line, "You've redecorated, haven't you?"
Yes, of course.
So meet back here in 4 years' time and see if the 60th anniversary story continues that trend.
It'll be interesting, yes.
Well, I think you've cracked it there, Paul. I mean, that's obviously the way in which we ought to end this episode.
Brilliant.
Okay, there you go. That would kill the last line.
Sorry, it's getting quite late.
It is.
I've stopped sparkling quite some time ago. I think Thursday.
Okay. Well, look, thanks both of you. Thanks to the listeners for staying with us. That's drawing our anniversary special to an end after these 2 episodes. So, and it's drawing the year to a close for our regular episodes. So, yeah. Thanks for being with us, and we'll join you again in the new year. I think we'll be bringing some of the 13th Doctor in the new series to you, but not quite in the way we did with 13 Cast. We talked among ourselves. We didn't want to bring the entire series to you, but we'll try mixing it in with some previous stories in classic Something Who fashion.
Are we going to call it Something 13?
No.
Good.
Oh, well.
Bye.
Okay, I enjoyed that. Bye-bye.
Very good. Fabulous. Right, well, are we ready to start
Yes.
recording the thingy?
I'll just channel my inner, whatever her name is, Kate Stewart. Right.
I'm not going to try and channel my inner Ingrid Oliver,
I'll go.
apart from getting quite testy about Brexit.
Here goes.
Hello and welcome to the second...
Sorry, I just chose that moment to cough. Very noisily.
Yes. Oh, God. Right.
It's okay, I can cut out any of that.
Ah. Giles?
Oh! I thought... I assumed you had an anecdote there, Paul.
Yeah, my anecdote is so lame. I was just weighing up just what level of interest I could squeeze out of it, and it's so lame that I can't possibly go first.
It's probably better than I think I can. Yeah, it's one of those things I can remember exactly where it was when I heard the news. I was listening to the news. I think maybe we need to burble for a minute because Richard seems to have dropped out.
He does. I'll pause there.
Yes.
And we could just talk among ourselves.
We could do.
Because we weren't giving him much space anyway.